All right. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me and see me all right? Okay, great. All right. Janice, Katie, Millie, Nina, Scott, good to have you all here. Janice, nice to see you. All right. How's everybody doing?
Really good.
Doing good? Okay. Hold on just a second. I realized I don't have the right audio hooked up. Hold on. Uh, let's see. All right. Can you guys still hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Doing good. All right, Janice, glad to hear it. All right, good to have so many of you here today. I know things are kind of crazy on campus. Class was a little small yesterday. Classes got started at UK, I think, on Monday, right? So, yeah, I was expecting maybe it would be tough for some people to attend this week. There's probably lots of student needs to take care of right now. All righty, let's see. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So, roasted spaghetti squash. Is this something anyone's made before?
What does it taste like?
Oh man, I find it fairly, it's fairly bland. Like it doesn't have a strong taste, right? So that is why it gets used, why you can pretty much put anything on it, right? Or use it like you would in place of like some other kind of noodle or pasta, right? That's how it gets used often. So it's kind of, I don't know, I kind of equate it, it doesn't taste like cauliflower, but I kind of equate it to how people use cauliflower rice, right, as a substitute for regular rice, and it just kind of picks up the flavor of whatever you put in there with it. It's kind of like that. I guess it maybe has a hint of squash taste, but not really. It just kind of picks up whatever you put in there. So if you want to put some, butter and herbs in there, you can do some Parmesan cheese. You can do, some people do like cinnamon and brown sugar, kind of like you would do for like butternut squash or something like that. Or again, if you want to then use it in a recipe, and get a little fancier with it, you can do that too. And you can see down here, I have this link where you can look at some recipes that call for baked spaghetti squash if you wanted to incorporate this into kind of like a larger recipe. But it's great on its own, even as a meal or a side dish. It's a low carb, fairly low carb vegetable, with a lot of fiber. So again, great kind of substitution. If you're looking to maybe substitute some pasta noodles now and again, it's also just a fun vegetable. I remember when I first time I made it and my kids were kind of little, and they just thought it was so fun to see how after you cook it, it becomes these kind of spaghetti like strands, right? That was really kind of cool and fun. So yeah, there's a lot of benefits to trying this. And spaghetti squash is usually available year round. It's usually not that expensive. And just something I wanted to put on your radar if you've never tried it or are in the habit of using it. Um, it's a pretty straightforward process with the roasting. Now, you can cook spaghetti squash in a microwave. I'm not saying this is the only way you can cook spaghetti squash, but again, we've talked about roasting and how that brings out kind of the natural sugars that are in vegetables, gives it a little bit more dimension of flavor. So I would recommend doing it this way if you can. Um, so yeah, you're gonna just set your oven at 400. You're gonna cut the top and the bottom off so that you have a flat surface to stand up your squash and then slice it down the middle. That's probably gonna be the hardest part of the process is cutting your squash. If you find it really difficult to cut, put it in the microwave for a minute or two to soften it up, and you might find that a little easier. And then you're gonna scoop out the seeds and some of the fleshy stuff that's the stringy insides. You'll see it when you cut it open. The rest of it will look very solid. So you're taking out the strings and the seeds, put a little olive oil, salt and pepper on there, cut side down, bacon for about 35, 40 minutes. And then the beauty is once you take those squash out and you take a fork and you start to shred it up, it'll look just like these noodles here in the picture. So it's pretty cool. All right. Yeah, Janice, it is. I'd say it's considered a low calorie food. Yep. It's more on the end of your non-starchy vegetables than your starchy vegetables. So, like starchy vegetables are going to be like your potatoes and corn and peas and your winter squashes. This is going to be more along the lines of like your, yeah, broccoli and cauliflower and carrots and things like that. Yeah. All right. Good question. Oh, Lori, good to have you here too. Wow. Good little crowd here. Okay. Well, I hope you will try this. It doesn't sound like maybe anybody here has today. I just had one person yesterday who had prepared spaghetti squash. So it's a great fall kind of thing too, now as we're easing into fall. So all right. So our topic for this week, making peace with the scale. All right. Now, I know not everybody uses a scale. Some people may not use one at all. Some people may use it occasionally. Some people may use it with some regularity. And this is not to give any absolutes about what is the right or wrong thing to do with the scale. Okay. That is not my intention today to tell you there is a right or wrong way to use the scale, or that you should or shouldn't use the scale at all. That is not my place to say, right? That is a personal decision that each one of you have to make. But I do want to be sure that I put the scale in some kind of context and perspective so that we can use it in the most productive way possible. Or maybe as a result of today, you decide maybe you're going to take a little break from the scale, create a little distance, break up with the scale perhaps for a little while, and see how that feels too. So there could be several kind of outcomes to this lesson based on kind of how you process it. But again, I don't want anyone thinking I'm trying to tell you, what is right or wrong for you or what you should or shouldn't do with the scale, but just give you some things to think about and try to keep the scale in perspective. Anybody here want to share what their experience with the scale is? Do you guys use it regularly? Do you not use it at all? Did you used to use it and don't? Tell me. Janice, I think you weigh in pretty regularly, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am it's attached to my foot. Every day I have to weigh myself. And I've done that my whole life. And most of my life I've been really disappointed and really overweight. And now I'm doing good. And I kind of am afraid to get off track.
I see. So having like a feeling that the scale is helping to hold you accountable a little bit
Yeah,
for
that's a
the
good word for it.
the progress that you've made. Yeah. Right. And it may and it may not. It's hard to know, right? Because again, it kind of has this influence over us where we do kind of think maybe it's having a positive effect or any effect, but some people, and again, I'm just saying some people, discover that it really doesn't at the end of the day, that even if they didn't weigh, they would still keep doing the same things they normally do and the same behaviors, and that maybe it doesn't really change things. But again, maybe it does for you, I do know lots of people that weigh in, well, not lots, but yeah, there are some people who do weigh every day. And they view it as a way to kind of, keep on track and view trends, kind of before they get out of hand to be able to address those. Let's see, Lori, I use it once a week, or no, I use it regularly. I do not use a scale. If I've had a big eating session, like a weekend night out, wait a couple days. I think that's pretty smart, actually, Lori, to kind of be strategic about when you're going to use it. In terms of, yeah, if you've maybe had a bigger meal, maybe sometimes for women, especially, right, if there's hormonal things going on, that can change your weight. If you had a lot of sodium, you're retaining water, that changes things. So many factors. So it's always good to know what maybe some of those factors are and possibly avoid weighing in when they're occurring. But also, for someone like Janice who's weighing every day, you probably learn over time how to put, the scale into some context, right? That if you were to see a jump of like, 2 or 3 pounds in one day, like that's not actual weight gain from yesterday. It's because, oh, I am retaining fluids, or I had this big meal yesterday, or what have you. So or maybe you're, got injured and you have some inflammation, that can change things. So being able to keep it in context, I think, and understand all the factors that may affect it day to day or week to week is important. Um, Katie, once a week, and that's generally what the recommendations say. Recommendations. I mean, not that there's national recommendations on how often to use the scale, but generally when you hear people talking about the scale in the context of weight management, they generally a generally agreed upon timetable is once a week, where that gives you enough information to know kind of what's going on. Like if there's a trend, maybe week to week, you can catch it, like I said, early enough, if you want to intervene. But it also helps avoid, for some people now, this is why I give Janice great credit, that she can be on the scale every day and it be something that's not completely, again, discouraging, or makes her feel like she and that she hasn't given up on it already. Because for a lot of people, when they weigh day to day, those ups and downs that you naturally will see really wreak havoc on people. They can, emotionally, right? And psychologically. Because again, if you can't keep it in a context and perspective, it really can be a very, very negative experience. So, the weighing once a week can help with that too, if people are prone to kind of being very reactive day to day to the number on the scale. Scott doesn't use it at all. And what is your experience with that, Scott? Like, I mean, what was that, an active choice, Scott, to not use the scale?
Yeah, pretty much. I just kind of felt that I'm probably always going to be at least a little overweight,
Hmm.
and ideal weight is kind of subjective anyway.
Right.
So it's just one thing. I just don't need that.
Hmm.
I don't need that little bit of stress, because I'll either be overweight or underweight. If I'm really
Right.
working at it. So it's impossible to maintain like an exact weight no matter what. So I just don't use it. I mean, I
Yeah.
kind of know how I feel. If I feel bad, I can usually figure it out.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And Scott, just for full disclosure, used to come to our in-person meetings where you guys know we were doing weigh-ins and using the scale. And we've had some very interesting stories after that. Some that are like Scott's, like, geez, once I wasn't weighing in, I actually didn't really miss it. It was kind of liberating in a way. And or maybe again, like kind of like Scott said, it forced you to focus on other things in terms of how you feel and what your body's telling you, maybe how your clothes fit. That there's other ways to kind of measure that progress. So thanks for sharing that, Scott. Millie, you quit after I started to eat well, and I've actually lost weight the last 2 doctor's appointments. That is very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So yeah, not using the scale and you've lost weight, right? So I love that people can hear that that can happen too, right? Because again, sometimes there is that fear that if I'm not holding myself accountable on the scale, that perhaps it's all gonna fall apart. But some people, again, this is all about the mindset, and this is different person to person. But sometimes that experience of weighing on the scale is just triggers a stress response in and of itself. And what effect is that stress response having on our bodies, right? Both physically and mentally, right? So if you feel like it's triggering a pretty significant stress response, then your overall health might be better just avoiding the scale. Absolutely. Um, Katie, I did have my body measure the performance lab last week. Oh, it was interesting for anyone wanting to dig deeper into body fat and resting metabolic rate. Katie, do you remember those? Yes, weigh-ins at the meeting. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. Okay, I'm going to click on that link so I have it for later. Okay. Do they do that for free? Or you have to pay? Like, how did you get to do that? I'm just curious. And that metabolic testing is interesting because it's at least something that can be a little bit more tailored to your individual body. I mean, you guys know you can, try to use online calculators and things to figure out your, calorie needs and metabolic rate, but it's very generic. So they can probably hone in a little bit more, into a little bit more specific range, but there still is a, margin of error that you have to keep in mind. All right. Okay. So I think the main things here to start out, and we've kind of covered this here on for these first couple points, right? We want to really think about if a weigh-in is, having this kind of negative psychological impact on you in the moment, right? Is it really changing kind of like your mood for the day? Or is it, kind of shattering your confidence in terms of, how well you thought you were doing? And if the answer is yes, then maybe the scale is having too much power over you. Maybe that is a sign to take a step back from it, right? When we used to do the weigh-ins at the meetings, again, we did that for years. And it was learned a lot about human psychology, I think, doing that. But we would, ask people when they came, oh, how's it going? How you feeling about things? And before they weighed in, they'd be like, oh, I'm great. I feel so good. I was, I felt like I ate more vegetables and I drank more water and I was moving more. And then they get on the scale and it doesn't tell them whatever they wanted it to tell them. And then all of a sudden, I mean, you see the mood shift immediately. And all of a sudden, they're saying things now like, well, I did have that cheeseburger Friday night. And oh, I did have some desserts. And all of a sudden now, their brain has completely switched off thinking about all those good things they did. And now they're focused on all the quote unquote bad things they did, right? That is not a healthy relationship with the scale. Okay. And I think that is a very common experience that, whatever the scale is telling you, it's making you doubt the good things that you've done and it's minimizing them. Right. And that doesn't change no matter what the scale says. You still did things you should feel good about, right? That are good for your health and overall, well-being. So that's the kind of example I'm talking about. If the scale is having that kind of influence, you might want to re-examine. And remembering too, from a scientific standpoint, weight is simply the force of gravity on your body mass. Sometimes it's good to hear that, right? That's all it is. It is not a measure of your worth. It is not a measure of, how good a person you are or your morality or anything like that, right? It's not a measure of you. It is the force of gravity on your body mass, okay? And there's lots of things that can affect it, like we said, fluid retention, different foods, different health conditions, medications, all of that. Let's see. Every time I felt good about the weigh-in, my weight was high. And every time I felt bad about it, my weight went down. Strange. I remember that, Scott. That was kind of like our ongoing joke, wasn't it? I know. Yeah. I don't know. And it's funny to think about that too. It's like, what kind of mind games maybe do we play with ourselves around the scale like that? I don't know. But I think it's kind of complex, more than we realize. All right, so let's think about how we can keep the scale in perspective. What are some things we can remind ourselves of, other that are important to focus on, other indicators of progress, and maybe why we don't want to, again, look at the scale as the end all and be all measure of our progress. And I'm not saying anyone here does, even if they use the scale with regularity. I'm not saying you view it as the end all and be all of progress. I hope you don't. I don't think that you do. Okay. But it's easy to get stuck in that trap though. So want to be sure you have the reminders to keep you from doing that. The scale cannot tell the full story and status of your health, right? Okay. I have seen over the years many, many examples of people who have, focused on weight loss as a way to maybe lower their cholesterol, lower their blood sugar, manage diabetes. Okay. And we know that those things, based on the research, are associated. But I've also seen many people who just made nutritional changes without necessarily weight loss being the focus and were able to improve those numbers without any or significant weight loss. Okay. So it can happen. I know that when you go to, for example, a lot of the doctor's offices out there, whatever's going on with your health, the answer always is, oh, lose some weight, lose some weight, lose some weight. You guys feel like you hear that a lot?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's like the answer to everything. And again, yes, the research tells us those two things are associated, but it doesn't mean it is the solution. Okay. Or there can't be other alternatives. And again, like I said, I've seen people change their eating habits for the better, maybe not really see any weight loss, but see those lab values actually change. Okay. So it can happen without weight loss too. I could tell by how my clothes fit. Yeah, Nina, I'm like you. I don't weigh. I don't. We have a scale in our bathroom. My husband uses it. I don't know why he uses it, but he uses it. It doesn't bother him. But I maybe used to use it. I think I maybe was using it when I was pregnant for the first time because I just wanted to keep an eye on, like, I was just curious about how my body was changing and healthy weight gain and all of that. But I don't know, after a while, I just, after I had my kids, I was like, forget it. Yeah, and I just kind of go by my clothes too. Absolutely. And just like Scott said, how you just feel in general, right? The scale blinds you to real progress and results. Okay. So again, if we are like those people, again, I use these examples when they weigh in, they used to weigh in our meetings, oh, I did all these great things, right? And again, the scale, depending on what it's telling you, can blind you to that, right? And make you feel like, oh, that wasn't good enough, or the quote unquote bad things I did outweighed those good things, right? And just it kind of leads you into minimizing again that kind of progress you made. And that's the real progress. The behaviors you chose to do on a day-to-day basis, that is the real progress. That's what I mean when I say real progress, right? The choices you made day to day in terms of how you think, how you behave, how you eat, right? That is real progress, okay? Not the number on the scale. And again, by focusing on the scale, you lose sight of that. The scale keeps you stuck on food. So eventually, if you're, sometimes again, depending on how kind of dysfunctional the relationship with the scale is getting, food starts to equate with just numbers on the scale. Well, if I eat this, then that's going to make me gain weight. If I eat this, I'll lose weight. Or if I don't eat this, whatever. And so you're always equating what you're eating with what's going to happen on the scale and really closely linking those two things, right? And that one keeps you stuck on food. And it also kind of gives you tunnel vision where you're not paying attention to all the other factors that should go into how you make your food decisions. You're not thinking about, what is it that I actually really want to eat? What is it that my body needs? Am I hungry or am I, full? All those other factors, some of you have heard us talk about a lot of those in intuitive eating, for example, right? That's kind of where I'm going with that. You lose sight of all those signals that your body's trying to give you about what it needs and when it needs it, right? And you're just kind of, again, stuck on food, and food is always equated with weight and calories in, calories out. But again, healthy eating is a whole lot more than that, right? That is a very simplistic way to look at eating. The scale cannot tell how fit you are or how much energy you have. So again, we see people who make nutritional changes often, again, when they improve the nutrient density of their diet and they eat more regularly throughout the day, they feel better, right? They just feel better. They have more energy. If you're also working out, exercising, trying to move more, right? That will also help you have more energy. It will help increase your fitness, right? So again, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that, hey, I can go up this flight of stairs feeling a little less winded now, right? I can get up off the floor a little bit easier. I can get through my day and do all the things I have to do with a little energy left over. These are the things, again, that we can accomplish often without weight loss, right? Now, again, I know a lot of people tell me, like, when they feel like they're carrying more weight than they need, that they feel like it's weighing them down, quite literally, right? And that does not feel good. And so I understand that weight loss will still be a part of that in terms of how people feel they can move in their bodies. It often is related to the pressure people feel on their knee joints, right? We know that there is really an exponential pressure that gets put on your knee joints from weight that you have as well, excess weight. So yes, I understand there are very real reasons why losing weight would help someone feel better. I get that, right? But also realizing that, progress can be made in those areas without, significant weight loss too. The scale can create a vicious cycle of punishment and reward. So, well, again, we'll have people weigh in. Maybe the scale is, again, not what they wanted to see. They're disappointed or whatever the result is. And one of two things can happen with that. One, someone may say, oh, well, what I was doing, didn't work, wasn't enough. Let me double down and really try it harder, or try again this week, right? It kind of maybe remotivates them to try again. Or you get the other side of it where the scale again is a disappointment, and then all of a sudden you think, oh, forget it. I'm just going to give up, right? Like whatever I'm doing is not working, and so I'm just going to give up. Okay. So again, it turns into, this vicious cycle, right? But also we have people who maybe the scale, tells them something good that they want to see, and that can go two ways too. Well, usually it just goes to reward. Well, I mean, why would you punish yourself for doing, having a good weigh in, right? But a lot of times people will see this progress on the scale one week and think, "Ooh, great, it's working," and then go and kind of, reward themselves by eating, "Oh, I'm going to go have some donuts, or I'm going to go have some ice cream." And again, instead of kind of staying the course, right? So yeah, the scale can really kind of set us up on this roller coaster where we're kind of either, celebrating or punishing ourselves based on what the scale told us. And again, that's going to really interfere with trying to make some of that real progress we talked about, trying to be consistent, trying to build sustainable habits. If you're riding that roller coaster of those ups and downs and, responding to what the scale says in these kind of extreme ways, then yeah, it's gonna be real hard to make sustainable change. And also you're not giving it a chance, right? I mean, that's the other thing I think, that even if people are using the scale as a feedback tool to see if they're losing weight, they often don't give it enough time. I know everybody is so anxious to see results, but it can take time. And I think Janice, I know you've explained your own journey, to us here in class about, it's just chipping away at it a little bit over time, and it is slow, right? But it happens eventually. And I think that's also, a barrier for people being able to kind of hang in there until they start seeing some progress. The scale doesn't know that your clothes are fitting better. So, right, Nina, you said that. I think some other people mentioned it. That's definitely how I roll. Yeah, how your clothes fit will often tell you. Absolutely. Okay. You cannot control the number on the scale. And I get some pushback on this when I say this. If you think about it though, you really cannot control the number that pops up on the scale. You can do behaviors and make choices that may increase or decrease the likelihood of what you're going to see on the scale, but you can't control it in any absolute sense. Your body's kind of got a mind of its own that way, right? So again, that leads into the frustration. How many times have we talked in this class about trying to focus on what you can control, right? When we're always trying to control things that are uncontrollable, that's where we feel like failures. That's where we feel that frustration. So I put the scale in that category, honestly, in a lot of ways, that you can't really control that number, okay? But you can control your behaviors and your choices day to day, okay? That's what you can control. And that, again, that is the real progress we've been talking about. Weight is transient. Kind of like Scott was saying, really, he was talking about how, it's hard to maintain a weight over time, and it is for a lot of people. Definitely over longer periods of time as your body changes, or as we age, or different things happen to us, right? Yeah, there's always stages of that. And weight is transient. It's like it's just a number at a moment in time. All right. But again, the changes you make are enduring, right? These habits you're building, these new behaviors and thought processes, that will last, right? And that will stick with you forever, no matter what your weight is. And then finally, don't put your trust in the scale, right? Kind of, I've seen this before. I'm not making up this phrase, but I've seen quotes like, the scale is kind of like a false idol, right? That we kind of, kind of worship at the altar of the scale, but it's a false idol. It's fooling us, right? And, kind of playing tricks on us in a way, some of the ways we've talked about today. So I don't know, maybe that's harsh language, but I think there's some truth to it, to think about, really just, it can, again, without the right perspective and context to keep it in, it can lead us astray, and it can have some, very negative effects on us. And we want to be aware of that. And so we want to take whatever the scale's telling us with a grain of salt, and really, truly, at the end of the day, trust in us, right? Trust in our ability to make progress, make changes that, again, are enduring, okay, and sustainable. All right. Oh, look at that. I ended at 12:45 on the dot. That doesn't often happen, but here we are. What other oh, thank you, Janice. Other thoughts that you guys have based on what we've covered today?
Hmm. Maybe I'll try to let loose a little bit.
Well, it's something to think about, Janice. And again, this is just, again, putting it out there to let people think about, if this applies to them or not. And again, may or may not change anything about how you use the scale right now. That's not the goal, but might give you something to think about. And, maybe even it's just baby steps. Maybe you just start with, maybe you just experiment with just what would it be like to weigh every other day instead of every day, right? And just kind of see how that goes. Again, just as an experiment. It doesn't have to mean that, okay, this is what I'm doing, or you have to commit to it, but just to create a little bit of that distance, see how it goes. It's up to you. But I'm glad it, again, planted the seed of maybe some things to think about. Excuse me. Did anybody read the blog post from this week? I don't know that connected with everybody. Who is familiar with the movie Office Space? Anybody? Scott, I actually thought of you specifically as I was creating that post, thinking, this is something Scott will love. He'll know what this is. Okay, well, anyway, it may be a bit of a generational movie. I don't know, Office Space. But the idea is, and it's, what is it, from the 90s, I guess, maybe early 2000s, but it's a movie about kind of a satiric, kind of about what it's like working in an office and the office culture and kind of making fun of all of that, right? And in one scene, which is linked up on the blog post, there's a 2-minute scene from the movie where the guys all take the super annoying printer from the office out to a field and smash it with a baseball bat because they're so mad at this printer, right? We all know that, how the technology goes at the office, and it's like, paper jams and out of ink and all the stuff, and they're just like dealing with it every day, and they finally just go take the printer and smash it. And I said in the blog post that when I talk about this topic with the scale and maybe breaking up with the scale, I think about that scene. I picture that people like taking their scale and smashing it with a baseball bat, like if you really want to really make the break, right, like that is what you would do. So again, my mind works in strange ways, but I just had to put that out there for you guys, that truly is what comes to mind when I see that scene. I picture, this would be fun if people had scales and smashed them with a baseball bat. Apparently that is a thing too. I saw online that people, I guess it's been a thing like at New Year's now. There's groups that, because New Year's resolutions and the weight loss and all of that, as a way to fight back on that, they actually have events at like New Year's now where people bring scales and they do smash the scales, and all of that. So I thought that was kind of funny. That is a thing. All right. Let's see, Nina, very funny movie and loved the TV series Office. Oh, I've never watched the TV series, but I'm thinking if I liked Office Space, I'd probably like that show. Yeah. All right. Well, you guys have a great rest of your week. Next week, we are going to talk about nutrition fake news. We're going to talk about all those sensational headlines and all of that confusing, advice that also seems to contradict itself. And how do we make sense of all of that, right? And really hone in on what is real and what isn't. Okay. Okay. Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh, hey, Scott.